Madam President.
The senator from Rhode Island.
I am here, Madam President, I guess to offer a eulogy for the supposed Republican principle that government should not be used to pick winners and losers. Turns out that principle is soluble in money. Months before the 2024 election, President Trump offered big oil and coal cronies a super deal. They give him $1 billion to take the White House, of which he got at least several hundred million, and he'd pay them back bigly. He'd use government to make them winners and clean energy losers. So he has bent over backwards to make big oil, big polluters happy. And his efforts to prop up his coal industry donors have been particularly flagrant. Coal, as an energy source, is a dirty and dying industry. Coal is expensive to mine. Coal-fired power plants are expensive to operate. And coal-powered electricity is expensive to buy. So besides being toxic to mine and burn, coal is a bad financial play, at least in the real open market that Republicans claim to want to honor. So to pick his winners and punish his losers, Trump issued a series of executive orders directing state and federal actors to revive the zombie coal industry. At the beginning of this year, several Indiana utilities had announced plans to retire polluting coal plants and shift to cleaner energy sources. Following Trump's executive orders, and who knows what other private conversations, several of these utilities canceled plans to retire the polluting coal units. This is a pretty big deal well outside of Indiana, because coal plants like these emit hundreds of thousands of tons of pollution each year, including the pollution which forms smog. Exposure to smog is serious. It causes lung disease. It causes cardiovascular problems. It even causes reproductive issues. And it's been documented to cause premature deaths. And it blows into other states. Prevailing winds take the pollution and blow it into other states. In fact, I've argued that there are smokestacks designed specifically to get the pollution out of the home state and land it on the downwind states like Rhode Island. Under the cross-state air pollution rule, EPA sets emissions budgets to protect people in the downwind states from dangerous smog-forming pollution that comes out of another state and blows across the border from the upwind coal-fired power plants. Well, after these Indiana coal plants got their inducement to extend, EPA had to loosen its previously set emissions budget for Indiana that protected the downwind states in order to allow more smog to spread, because that's what reopening these plants does. It allows more smog to spread. EPA promulgated this deregulatory rulemaking without a notice and comment process, giving no opportunity to anyone downwind, vulnerable to smog pollution from Indiana, to communicate into the EPA process their concerns. Well, back in 1996, Congress enacted the Congressional Review Act to give Congress the opportunity to vote on regulations like this. During the Biden administration, the Senate actually conducted 35 roll call votes in relation to Republican-sponsored Congressional Review Act resolutions of disapproval. Now, the Trump administration is engaged in an effort at breakneck speed to pick winners and punish losers, and if doing so requires them to tear down protections of Americans' health, of our safety, of the environment, that's all fine with them. Congressional Review Act resolutions like this one can help hold the administration to account. I strongly urge a vote upholding our response against this polluting regulation. And I move to proceed to calendar number 142, SJ Res 60. Madam President, if the senator wishes to speak, I'm willing to withdraw my motion to proceed, which I think is not debatable and would cut him off. But I would like to know how much time the senator would like, and then I would like a unanimous consent that we then move to proceed at the conclusion of his remarks to this calendar number 142. And Senator Capito as well.
How much time?
Is there objection?
I thank the good senator. Madam President, I request 5 minutes to state my case.
And the distinguished chairman of Environment and Public Works would like some time as well.
5 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam President. I would say I love all of our states, and I'm very proud that the state of Indiana plays such a critical role in ensuring the economic resiliency and the manufacturing potential of this great nation, something so important to all of our citizens, irrespective of where you live. I represent the most manufacturing-intensive state in the country. Energy demand is up. Manufacturers are investing and expanding. Small businesses are plugging in, and our nation's energy needs are rising. And Indiana is foremost a manufacturing state. About 45% of our in-state electricity generation comes from coal. That's the reality. That means dependable around-the-clock capacity isn't optional. It's how the Hoosier economy runs. Yes, the expectation was that 4 Indiana coal-fired power units would be offline by 2024, but the facts on the ground have changed. And our responsibility here today is to keep power dependable and affordable with the megawatts we have, the megawatts we already have. So what the EPA is doing now is a common sense correction. That's all we're talking about. Updating Indiana's summer emissions limit to match the plants that are actually in operation, while keeping the underlying clean air guardrails in place. Keep those in place. Plants still have to meet current environmental standards. They still have to run controls. No one's getting a free pass here. This is merely a housekeeping correction that lines up the state limit with active generation, so unrealistic, retroactive costs aren't forced on power plants and ultimately the ratepayer. This is common sense, pushing aside the bureaucracy, using the flexibility that we have in the law. And it keeps the numbers honest, keeps the planning stable for the hottest months of the year. and it avoids regulatory whiplash. Imagine if we're changing the rules nonstop back in D.C. Create great uncertainty. So this accommodates the realities on the ground. And if this fix is overturned, Indiana would revert to older limits designed for a fleet that no longer exists. So in practice, that means less operating room during heat waves and higher costs right when our citizens need power the most. All of our citizens. Hoosiers are already feeling it. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Indiana's average home electricity prices are up roughly 11.5% year over year. And the Trump administration aims to do something about it. Rather than working to keep generation steady and reliability predictable, my colleagues, or at least some of them on the other side of the aisle, are advancing a repeal effort that would punish Indiana at the worst possible time. Hoosiers should not pay more because government insists on regulating yesterday's grid instead of today's realities. Instead, we should focus on adding new capacity before prematurely retiring existing assets, and cut red tape so generation pipelines and transmission get built faster. That's what we should do. Let's not write off active megawatts and then act surprised when bills rise and lights flicker. So if your priority is reliability and protecting American families from price spikes, the choice is clear. Keep what works today so we can build what we need for tomorrow. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this disapproval resolution, and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from West Virginia.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the gentleman from Indiana for really framing the debate for his home state of Indiana. I rise today in opposition as well to S.J. Res 60, the CRA that is introduced by my colleague from Rhode Island, Senator Whitehouse, to overturn this technical correction to the state of Indiana's admissions. The interim technical correction is necessary due to the Supreme Court's stay of the Good Neighbor rule. And I urge my colleagues to vote no and return the Senate floor to our business of confirming President Trump's nominees in the face of historic obstruction. Allow me to explain just a bit, and both of them have explained this. In 2021, the EPA issued a federal implementation plan covering Indiana. In doing so, they relied on the announced retirements of 4 electric generating units projected to happen in 2023. In 2022, those power plants announced that they would no longer close, which EPA accounted for in their Good Neighbor rule. So the Supreme Court subsequently stayed that rule, meaning that Indiana was now forced into their now outdated 2021 emission budget. The Trump administration's EPA finalized this interim rule that the CRA would repeal to adjust Indiana's emissions budget to reflect what it would have looked like in 2021 had those plants not announced retirement. I'll say every single day, every one of our offices is deluged with people coming in saying, we need more power in this country. If we're going to win the race in AI, if we're going to win the next race in innovation, we have to have more power. So this is an example, I think, of the Trump EPA working to make changes that ensure legal durability and reflect practical energy and environmental needs for specific states that the Biden administration had neglected. It's surprising to me that anybody would want to spend time on this minor interim rule specific to one state that will not have a material impact on air quality,